In this session, we are going to learn what a small group is and the biblical model that God designed for His church. Now, I love this phrase that small groups are not a program of the church, they are the church. Now, as we look at the biblical model, we're going to obviously look through two components, Old Testament and New. Now, we're going to just stay on a couple of the most famous parts that kind of re-emphasize the importance of being in a small group. Could look at a number of different things in both the Old and the New Testament, but we're going to stay a little bit more to the macro pieces. Now, let's jump into the Old Testament model. Probably one of the most famous passages is Exodus 18, verses 13 through 26. Now, I want to break this up into four little parts. The problem. Moses was doing all the work by himself, and he was burning out. As you look through verses 17 and 18, you start to see that Moses was having the Messiah complex. He was trying to handle all the issues. There was no building up of other leadership. He was doing it himself because he probably felt he was the only one qualified to do it. Now, let's look at the solution. They divided the ministry to God's people into smaller groups. When you read verses 21 through 22, you start to see that the solution was saying, let's break this down into smaller components. Because when it's into smaller components, then you start to see that people have different levels of maturity, of leadership, and responsibility that they get the longer they've been with Christ. Now, the strategy that Moses, he appointed leaders of 10, leaders of 50, leaders of 100, and leaders of 1,000. And it's no shocking results that we start to see. There is a structure that Moses is putting in place. So as this course develops, you're going to see, we're going to talk a lot about structure. But Moses, his strategy was building a structure that helped people minister to people at the level of their capability. Now, this is the important thing that we get from this story. The result. Moses was relieved, and here's the important part. Everyone had his needs satisfied. You might want to take verse 23 and just put that somewhere up that you'll see it all the time. Because what happened is not only was the leadership relieved, and the common term today is that Moses built a pipeline of developing leaders. But what was important to understand is that everyone had their needs satisfied. Wouldn't you love to have that in your church?